So I'm sure you've probably seen all the news of the last several years of over-tourism and immigration issues and maybe issues caused by digital nomads or investors moving into the country and buying up real estate, those types of things. So I want to talk about, are these things actually an issue? And my perspective as a digital nomad who has been traveling for over 9 years and has lived in over a dozen countries. Is digital nomading actually something that's immoral, or is there a correct way of doing it? How should the locals be handling it, etc.? First, I want to define what immigration is. Immigration is this massive umbrella that sort of contains digital nomads to tourists that stay longer, expats, investors that come in and buy real estate, asylum seekers, people who are moving there for a job or moving there to retire, etc. And I think it's important to point this out because a lot of times you'll hear the media or people in general just saying, immigration's the issue, but they don't really specify what's the issue. And maybe they think all of it's an issue. That's fair too. But I do think there is a correct way to have immigrants come into your country. And I think it's actually a net benefit for both the immigrants and for the locals if you do it correctly. I think what you've seen across parts of Spain where they have over-tourism, or France and other parts of Europe where they have immigrants that are causing crime rates to increase, or immigrants that are, at least they think, increasing the cost of living, etc. I think a bad solution to these problems is just to say, okay, well, let's just lock down our doors and we'll just prevent all or most tourists from coming here, and let's just prevent immigration. And I think a good way of handling this is sort of what I talked about in my AI video about how AI is inevitable. It is inevitable that we are moving into this age of information. You could call it the information age. And I think one of the side effects of the information age is that more people are aware how easy it is to travel, how easy it is to immigrate. They're also earning money online, and they can now freely move to other places of the world. And so this information age is just causing more people to sort of move more freely. I think in and of itself, that's not a bad thing. And I think the wrong way of handling that is to say, okay, well, we're just going to lock down and not accept anyone. So I think this influx of digital nomads and tourism in general is only going to increase over the years. And I think there's a way to benefit from it. I think it goes without saying, it is a good thing for the locals to have people coming into their country who take up no jobs and only spend money into the country because they're earning it from another country. That's actually more unfair for the country they left than it is the country they're going to, because again, they're taking up no jobs. They're only bringing money into the country. I think some countries realize this, which is why you see, I believe it was 2019, the first digital nomad visa was Estonia. And then now, just several years later, I think there are over 60 or 70 countries that offer digital nomad visas. And it's because they see the benefit of allowing people to come in that earn remotely and then spend it into their country without taking up any jobs. That's unheard of before this new information age. But I think governments and nomads need to do this correctly. If you're going to immigrate somewhere and you're planning on staying months or years or maybe even sort of indefinitely, your goal as a digital nomad, or if you want to call yourself an expat or an immigrant or whatever, should be to embrace the local culture and blend in as much as possible. Basically, your goal should be to become like the other locals. Of course, within reason, you don't have to necessarily give up your religion or something. But I think if you think a country is valuable enough to live in for at least an extended period of time, you should go there with the attitude of, okay, I want to become more like them. Because it is true, if we had, let's say, every American move to Tokyo overnight, Tokyo wouldn't be Tokyo anymore. It would be basically another version of maybe New York City or something. And the thing is, we don't need that. We already have New York City. But there's nothing wrong with Americans or any other country moving to Tokyo and trying to become Japanese. That doesn't mean they're going to fool any locals or anything like that. But I do think it is respectful to them to try to learn the local language and try to blend in. Because there's a reason why you left the place you left to move to the place you're going to. You shouldn't try to make the new place like the old ones. Practically, for example, I'm an American. I haven't been to America in a couple of years now, but one of the things I had to learn very quickly is that while living in multiple countries, particularly in Europe, I shouldn't dress like an American. I shouldn't dress with, flip-flops and socks and, cargo shorts. Not that I ever really dressed exactly like that, but the thing is, now, I don't want to go, and I'm sure the locals don't either, want to go to a local restaurant and hear this loud, obnoxious American speaking with cargo shorts on, and everyone else in there is dressed up. You need to become the environment that you're trying to appreciate. And from a government perspective, I think you see, particularly in places like Portugal and Spain, Italy, but really across the board, governments are allowing immigrants to come in, but they're not really enforcing the immigrants to adapt to the local laws and customs as much as really they should in most cases. For example, there's this idea that immigrants from certain countries, India or Somalia or places in Africa, cause an increase in crime. And I can see why people would say that because, yeah, you go to a lot of cities in Europe and you're like, okay, well, the crime went up and there's a bunch of people from Somalia and India here. So 2 plus 2 is 4, right? The thing is, they're also missing the fact that there are a lot of immigrants from India or places in Africa or, wherever in the UAE or in Singapore, but you don't see high crime rates. You actually see those are 2 of probably the most safest countries in the world. And why is that? Well, it's because the government and the judicial system actually work there. No one wants to commit a crime there because there are big penalties for it. And so the immigrants move there and they have to respect the laws. Versus you look at something like France or parts of the UK when they have problems with immigrants, it seems like their system's just sort of overwhelmed and just very bureaucratic and, they get a slap on the wrist or whatever, but it's just not enough. And so you see these high crime rates. Another thing I think governments need to do when they have immigrants coming to their country, no matter what type, is they need to allow for the free market to be able to build more accommodation, more housing, because you can't be like some of these countries where you open the door and allow a bunch of people to come in, but you're essentially not giving out any more building permits. And then the locals are wondering why the rents are skyrocketing and the housing in general is skyrocketing. And they blame the immigrants. Sure, they're partially responsible, but they really just pointed out an underlying issue, which is that it is very difficult to build more. If you look at places in Thailand, for example, or all over Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, you will see they have a lot of immigrants in a lot of these places, but their housing has really stayed consistent. And in some places, like parts of Kuala Lumpur, it's actually gone down over time. And this is because there's just so much housing being built that the demand can't keep up with the supply of houses. And so the prices stay relatively the same. I sort of feel bad for people in places like Portugal, where you see a bunch of digital nomads going to, or Italy, or Spain, or Greece, a lot of these countries where the government has allowed the digital nomads to come in, and not just nomads, but other immigrants as well. But then they have such a bureaucratic system that they don't allow the locals or immigrants to build more houses. And so, of course, the prices are going to go up. If these governments had some sort of initiative like, you can bring your money into the country and you can build affordable housing for locals. And if you do that, it will give you a residence permit in exchange. That would allow people to immigrate to the country, but also increase the supply of houses that would actually help with this whole housing crisis. The final topic I want to discuss is this whole over-tourism idea. Again, I think the word over is a bit subjective here, but you go to some of these cities and you see what they're talking about. There are just so many tourists there that it feels more like a theme park than it does historical city or a place that's worth visiting. I think there are proper ways to help handle that. Maybe you prevent certain types of stores from being built up and flashing lights and all this kind of stuff to help keep things natural. But that's a whole nother topic. But I also think that once the world starts to see that there are other places to go to, tourists will naturally spread themselves out to other areas of the world. For example, Spain has sort of been known as a great summer beach location to go to and vacation at. But it wasn't up until maybe 10 years ago, or even less than that, that Croatia was seen as an option. But I think over time, there are going to be more of these Croatias popping up where, oh, you can also go to Montenegro. That's a beautiful location. Oh, you can also go to Albania. That's a beautiful location. You don't have to all go to Greece. Like, they're in the same vicinity. They're not going to be the exact same place, but that's sort of the beauty of it. They're all different, but they're all unique in their own way. And I think eventually these tourists will start to spread out versus all trying to go to Paris. But it will take some time. Indonesia, for example, has, I think it's like 17 or 18,000 islands just in one country. But I guarantee you most tourists go to Bali and that's basically it. No one can sit here and tell me that, 17,999 of those islands are ugly and not worth visiting. And it's only Bali that's the only one that's worth visiting. That's not true. I'm sure there are some beautiful places to go to. And I think it will just take some time for tourists to realize, oh, there are other places to go to, and for the local infrastructure in these places to sort of build up. But once that happens, I think you'll see tourism more sort of spread out into other areas of the world. So what do you guys think? Do you disagree with me? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to follow me. I'm on my 9th year of digital nomading, where I buy and build businesses that fund my lifestyle.